Pollster Frank Luntz on what he sees as a continuation of a very busy president-elect. And I guess we always forget that, right, Frank? He's not president yet, but he sure is doing a lot.
Well, this is unprecedented. There is no president in my lifetime that has been as this active, talked to this many people, and this engaged specifically in the economy as Donald Trump. Now, I'll tell you two things. One is that the business community is a little bit unnerved by this. They're hoping that they're not going to be next. Nobody wants to be put on the carpet in front of the president-elect and told to cut their prices. And so everyone is going to be on their best behavior. And the voters themselves, it's one of the reasons why Donald Trump's numbers have come up so significantly in the last 3 weeks, that now a majority of Americans have a favorable impression of him. It's the first time since he began his campaign 18 months ago. He's at his high water mark because they like what he's doing. He's proving to them that he is serious, that these aren't going to be the usual political games that Washington plays, and that he's going to be more than their voice, that he's actually going to take a very tough hand to the corporate community, and they like it.
By the way, as you're speaking, Frank, we're getting word now that the president-elect is going to be naming Carl Icahn, the takeover financier, as an advisor on regulatory overhauls. Of course, Carl Icahn has been among those who said there's so many rules and regulations in the way of companies, small, medium, and large alike, that they really can't move forward. It's not so much a tax thing as a regulating thing. Icahn would be playing, presumably, this according to the Wall Street Journal, a central role in selecting the next chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission. But again, keeping with this very busy pace where he's supposedly tapping the best and brightest of the corporate world to send a message. What is that message?
That politics as usual will have no place in this White House. That corporate welfare is just as bad as fraudulent welfare, and that everyone's going to be held accountable. And if I can be candid with you, Neil, I was not expecting this. I am more than pleasantly surprised. This action, this activity has caught the American people and it really touched them, because most people at this point are preparing for Christmas. They're preparing for Hanukkah. They're leaving their jobs. And Donald Trump, even several days before, is still at work shaking up the system. And I'll give you one example. The appointment of Mick Mulvaney to be the director of OMB is absolutely brilliant. This is a man who knows how to hold Washington accountable, can't wait to get in there to cut wasteful spending, to upend the tax code so that it is truly fair and flatter. And Mulvaney's commitment to undo regulations. Trump is taking the best political people, the best business people, and saying, we're going to change this thing. We're going to rock Washington, D.C. And, Neil, the voters are seeing it, they're hearing it, they're feeling it, and they like what they see so far.
You know, I'm wondering, too, when you talk about that, and what, you know, someone like a Mulvaney, of course, has been zeroing in on government waste, and sort of many people say he would be a modern-day David Stockman, playing that role, a former congressman, as Ronald Reagan's budget director, and weed out this sort of waste and abuse. But I also want to pick your brain very quickly on what you make of the message Donald Trump is sending by going after two big defense contractors. I know these contracts are signed and done, but they're not signed and done with me. He seems to be letting Republicans know, your defense budget might be sacred to you, but it's not sacred to me. Waste is waste, and I'm not going to tolerate it. Then when he goes after Carrier for shipping jobs to Mexico, to remind them this isn't going to fly with me, and even threatening actions of tariffs and the like if they were to go about doing so. It is a populist message. It's popular, but I'm afraid it unnerves Republicans as well as Democrats.
Well, it absolutely unnerves Wall Street. It's got to unnerve the Business Roundtable and the Chamber of Commerce, because these are people who have depended on the support from Washington for many of their projects and programs. And it's just not going to be that way. Neil, the key attribute here that the president is pushing, that no president has done since probably Ronald Reagan, is accountability. And Trump is saying, I don't care what the agreement is, I don't care what the rules are. If you're not held accountable to hardworking taxpayers, I'm coming after you. The election is over. He's the president-elect. But that pursuit of accountability is why the public is warming to him, and why there are a lot of people in Washington, a lot of Republicans, and even some Democrats that are looking forward to the next 100 days.
You know, Frank, you're a great student of political history as well, and we were talking about you've never seen anything like this. I mean, sometimes something controversial comes up in the selection of a cabinet, and maybe with John Kennedy it was the selection of his brother to be Attorney General, maybe with Jimmy Carter, Burt Lance to be his budget director, but very little makes much of the needle move. But in Donald Trump's case, it's something every day, substantive moves that are actually changing not only how Wall Street responds, which has been very favorable since his election, but how companies react.
Well, look at the situation. I hope I'm not going to get into any trouble here, but he's picking ass kickers for these important jobs. These are not individuals that will shy away from a fight. These are people who are very principled, very experienced, very well respected in their individual professions, and they're spoiling for a fight. And those people who don't understand this, who don't understand that this is a new day in Washington, D.C., because so many tens of millions of Americans said they had enough with Washington, he is doing exactly what his voters would want him to do, and he's doing it well.
You know, you're an expert on so many fields. If you can go back to my nerdy purview, which is Wall Street. And as you know, the market's been racing ahead. Missed 20,000 today, but it's been racing ahead. The Dow up about 10% in that time since his election. Small stacks, Russell 2000, up about 20%. Virtually every sector, including the badly battered and embarrassed defense guys, have had a nice run themselves. Do you ever get the feeling, though, that Donald Trump, because he's doing things that are raising eyebrows and getting people excited, might be making things tough on himself by raising expectations and sentiment to the point that people are expecting the sun, the moon, and the stars?
No, because expectations were so low. The level of pessimism, the level of fear of the future was so high, Neil, that it was really hard for me to do my focus groups for Fox because everyone was so depressed and so not looking forward to the future. And over the last 6 weeks, that has completely turned. And the number that I look at, I know you're looking at the stock market, I look at consumer confidence and I look at actual consumer purchases. And both of them have been racing ahead over the last 6 weeks. And I do attribute that to the change in presidency. I think it's significant, and I think it's going to continue.
All right. Thank you very much, my friend. Frank Luntz, pollster extraordinaire, very good political and market read. He doesn't like the market part of it, but he's a pretty good market read.